The viewership of the CBC is cut in half since you took leadership in 2018. It's come down by half.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. Today we head over to the Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage, where the Chief Executive Officer of the CBC is called in to speak. The official agenda was listed as job cuts announced at CBC/Radio Canada. However, we're fairly certain that the Conservatives have something else on their minds. Why are they looking to grant bonuses to the executives with taxpayer money while simultaneously planning to lay off 600 employees?
Let's take a look.
We're meeting with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation to talk about job cuts announced by CBC Radio Canada. Witnesses today are Catherine Tate, President and CEO, Barbara Williams, Executive Vice President of CBC, Danny Melul, Executive Vice President Radio Canada, Marco Dubé, Chief Transformation Officer and Executive Vice President, People and Culture. Ms. Tate, you must proceed with your opening statement for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. I welcome the opportunity to talk with you today about the financial pressures facing CBC Radio Canada, but given the committee's motion, I would like to address the issue of bonuses first. For the record, CBC Radio Canada does not award so-called bonuses.
Time out. Okay, right off the bat. That's a lie. That is a bold-faced lie. This is the problem. So when you talk to government people and anyone in government-controlled organizations, they change the language on everything. Why? So you can't really understand what's going on. We've kind of talked about this before. So when she says, we do not award bonuses, what she's saying is we don't award money that we call bonuses. We award money called at-risk pay or performance-based compensation. What is it?
A bonus?
It's a bonus.
Yeah.
You stupid tart. Like, this is the problem here. And you can call it whatever you want. It's a bonus.
Yeah, but they're not counting on people like us to explain it to the Canadian public. They know that Canadians are watching this committee and Canadians are pissed off that our tax money is being wasted on executive bonuses. But they're not counting on Northern Perspective to say, hey, they are bonuses. They just call them something else.
Just like you'd call a cottage a chalet.
Exactly.
What we have, like every other Crown corporation, is at-risk or performance pay, which is a key part of the total compensation of our non-union staff.
There you go.
And what are non-union staff? Managers and up. Managers, directors, executives, etc.
Well, here's the thing. Typically in government organizations, managers don't get bonuses. Directors and up do. So those poor managers don't even get at-risk pay. They get nothing. They get their salary. They get government benefits, but they get their salary. So there you go. It's not a bonus. It's at-risk pay. It's not a cottage. It's a chalet.
About 1,140 employees. We benchmark that compensation against the middle range of pay for similar positions across the government and the industry. This at-risk pay is held back until the end of the fiscal year, and it is calculated based on the individual's performance and the corporation's performance.
That sounds an awful lot like a bonus to me. Don't you think so, Cypher?
Yeah, because of working for years in private corporations, guess what? Bonuses are also held back until the end of the year because bonuses are tied to performance. And you only get your bonus if you hit certain targets. Now, good organizations, they have many targets that divide up your bonus. So you may hit your target over here, so you get awarded a percentage of your bonus here, and you don't hit a target over here, so you wouldn't get a percentage of your bonus there. It really incentivizes the employee to actually perform well. But we're talking CBC here. You know, they've been on the decline since 2018. Every single year is the worst year they've ever had. So this is what we're working with, folks.
These specific measurements are linked to our annual business plan, including targets like revenue and reach and engagement across all of our services. Our board of directors reviews and approves these targets at the beginning of the year, and we report quarterly on our progress in our public documents. Government departments and crowns all have performance pay. It helps us deliver on key objectives and helps us stretch to meet ambitious goals. Over the past year, on multiple occasions, members of parliamentary committees have asked other organizations about so-called bonuses. I will tell you what they told you. Incentive pay is a part of total compensation, and the administration of compensation, like other human resources matters, remains the responsibility of the organization and its board of directors, which operates at arm's length from government. Those decisions will be made after the close of the fiscal year. Permettez-moi maintenant de revenir.
Let me now turn to the serious structural challenges CBC Radio-Canada faces. Shortly after I became president and CEO in 2018, I alerted our employees and the government, including the Minister of Finance, about the compounding annual structural deficit we face because of two factors outside of our control: inflation on goods and services and declines in television subscription and advertising revenues.
That structural deficit was $21 million per year. Today, it is $36 million. What this means practically is that we start each year with cuts to our budget. Unlike the private sector, we cannot manage fluctuations through loans or bridge financing. We must balance our budget each and every year. Over the 3 years of the pandemic, as revenues plummeted, most media companies had to lay off staff. We shifted resources to maintain services and to protect jobs. And we benefited from $21 million in additional government funding for each of the past 3 years. But today, our ability to shift resources and find savings is no longer sufficient to meet the growing deficit. Comme tous les médias, nous sommes confrontés.
Like all media, we face rising costs of operations and production, and declines in revenue, especially in the Quebec market. In addition, we are facing an additional 3.3% cut to our appropriation as part of the government's cost-saving effort, along with the end to the $21 million.
These factors contribute to a shortfall of $125 million for next fiscal year.
Wait. What year did you say that CBC started on the decline?
2018.
And what year did Catherine Tate start working at CBC as the CEO?
2018.
All right, that's what I thought.
Yeah, we just, want to
What
clarify
a coincidence,
that.
right?
Just clarify that.
Also, something else we want to clarify before we move on is that the audio issues you're hearing, the fluctuations, is from the committee, not from Northern Perspective.
Yeah. The audio people here are terrible. They're actually even worse than the OGO committee, and they've been pretty bad. So yeah. But here's the thing: you're running a business, and this lady is sitting there saying, "Well, we can't do anything. We don't have the flexibility of private organizations. Private organizations don't get $1.3 billion as a handout from the government every single year.
Right?
Like, give me a break." They actually have to worry about profit and loss. That's what they have to deal with. And they don't get taxpayer funding to run their company. So you're brought in as CEO, it's expected that you're going to do a good job. And if you haven't done a good job, well, that would explain why CBC sucks.
We alerted the government to our financial challenge last summer. We notified our employees in October. And in December, we announced that if our financial situation doesn't improve, we will need to cut approximately 800 positions, along with $40 million in independent production spending. We recognize the uncertainty and worry this creates for our employees and for Canadians who depend on our services. We will manage these cuts in a way that minimizes the effects on jobs and the services we provide. And if our financial picture improves, we will adjust. But as I have said many times, the public broadcaster faces chronic underfunding. Compared to other public broadcasters around the world, we serve the largest country across 6 time zones in 2 official languages and 8 Indigenous languages. And yet, at $33 per Canadian, a dime a day, CBC Radio-Canada is one of the worst funded public broadcasters in the world.
You're really sitting there crying?
You get $1.3 billion in taxpayer money every single year.
And here's the thing. We shouldn't have state-run media.
No, we shouldn't.
Like, we shouldn't. Like, it is what it is. You know, if all you were doing was, you know, putting on shows and stuff like that, I think we have a different conversation. But when you have CBC News literally being the mouthpiece for the Liberal government, that's a problem. And we see it time and again. And Canadians aren't falling for it. And that's reflected in your lack of viewership.
Well, and you know whose financial problems I never hear about, which leads me to believe that they don't have any, is CPAC. We get all of our political, well, maybe not all, but we get a good chunk of our political clips from CPAC, and they seem to be doing fine. They're publicly funded.
Yep. And they do a hell of a lot better in CBC because they don't take sides.
100%.
With 4 times less funding than the UK and France, and 8 times less funding than Germany. Until that situation changes, we must continue to manage with what we have and do our very best to stretch limited resources to meet our mandate. Thank you. Merci.
Wow. I love that she's treating that as a mic drop. Like,
Well, honestly, that last part especially, the whole thing in general, but especially the last part was just disgusting. The way she was trying to, like, I don't even know how to describe it, in her voice, make it sound like she was upset and that this is a travesty that they're not getting more money.
yeah. And you know, meanwhile, Canadians are sleeping in tents. And she's sitting there with her dyed hair, which looks terrible, and her supposedly fancy suit. Like, what message are you trying to send there, lady? Because all it sounds like is you're a spoiled, entitled little brat.
Well, and the reality is that their news cannot compete with independent journalists. They can't. Nobody wants to watch, again, the mouthpiece of the Liberals when they can go on YouTube and find unbiased media sources.
Hint, hint.
Ms. Thomas, Rachel Thomas, 6 minutes, please.
Thank you. Ms. Tate, thank you for giving us your time today. We much appreciate it. In your opening remarks, one of the statements that you made is that is that, of course, you know, you outlined some challenges that the CBC faces. I should also outline, though, that every other media outlet in this country doesn't start off with $1.4 billion taxpayer dollars at the start of the year. So while you might look to, play a bit of a card there in terms of poor me, let's start off with the fact, and that is, compared to other outlets in this country that are conducting themselves, to perform at a higher standard than the CBC in many ways, they're not starting off with that. So I think that's an important point that needs to be acknowledged right off the bat.
Wow, savage.
Yeah. Poor me. And just to make a correction to Miss Thomas, it is actually isn't us, because we double checked. It is 1.3 billion, plus or minus. So it sounds better, I guess, for Miss Thomas because she's rounding it up to 1.4 billion, but it is in around 1.3 billion. But Who cares? 100 million here, 100 million
it's
there.
a lot of money.
It's a heck of a lot of money.
Ms. Tate, we're here to talk about job cuts and bonuses, or you prefer to call them performance awards. And so my first question for you is, you've had 2 months to think on it. Of course, you were asked during an interview on national news, in fact, the CBC National, you were asked whether or not bonuses would be considered for executives. And you said it wasn't ruled out, essentially. And so having 2 months to think about it, have you come to a conclusion? Will there be bonuses for the executives within CBC?
Thank you for the question. I just want to clarify the reality of the obligations of the public broadcaster.
Why are we not answering the question? It's a yes or no.
Right? It's an easy one. This is a softball. But apparently not. And the fact that she's not answering it, I wonder what the answer is, because I don't think it's a no. I think it's a yes, we still intend to pay bonuses.
Of course, we have the privilege of a very, very generous parliamentary allocation, which, by the way, has not substantially increased in over 30 years. And during that time, we have added to traditional and radio, traditional television and radio, with digital services on all platforms. So we're operating with the same budget that we had 30 years ago. And where we get the same pressure as our colleagues in the private sector is from, in fact, the third of our budget that we earn in commercial revenues, which are absolutely vulnerable to the vagaries of the market. And that's the place where we have challenges.
Ms. Tate, in the interest of time, could you please answer my second question? My question, there wasn't actually two, there's just one. Mm-hmm. Perfect. If you could answer it, thank you.
So,
shut up and answer the question, lady.
Too bad Kelly's not there, because Rachel could ask him to call the witness to order.
Yeah, right?
I don't think this chair would do anything.
No, I don't even think she knows where she is. This is the chair that forgot what meeting she was at last time. So, but, the thing about Rachel Thomas is she can be bitchy when she needs to. Sometimes a little over the top, but it's hard to blame her when these are the witnesses that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So let's go. Answer the question.
To the question of performance pay, as I have said in my remarks, the performance pay is a critical part of total compensation.
My question was just whether or not you would be giving it. Will you be giving bonuses to executives?
My response to that question is to say that we have a process, a rigorous process. It is not my decision to award performance pay. It is, in fact, the decision of the board of directors, and that decision comes at the end of the fiscal year. We have another 2 months before we reach the end of the fiscal year. And as I have also said in public, everything is on the table.
Okay. So she's kind of lying because what happens in this case is the president of the CBC looks at the goals and objectives that all of the executives have, and then looks at the compensation for the bonuses, and then says, okay, for each executive, what would you have received? Would you have received your X percentage, whatever it is? And then what the CEO does, the president and CEO does, is then puts all that together and then makes a recommendation to the board. And that recommendation is, here's the recommended percentage that I think each executive should get. And then the board looks at that and says, yes, no, or makes an adjustment. So she's half lying, but one thing that she absolutely could and should do is, if you're going to be laying off 600 people, then you should probably make a recommendation that nobody's getting a bonus. That's the decent thing to do. So this is what needs to happen. Otherwise, it looks terrible. Especially when She herself is saying, well, only about like a quarter of our budget, it comes from revenue. Well, then you're doing a piss poor job of managing your budget, aren't you? This is what happens with organizations that actually don't really earn the majority of the money for themselves. They take advantage of it.
Well, and this is why they lobbied for bills like C11 and C18 to shut down independent journalists, because they can't compete.
Right, because they're stealing all their viewers. They think, well, if we shut down the independent journalists, then they'll have to come back to us, and then our revenue will go back up. No, I don't think so. All that would happen is the independent journalists would go to another platform, and then all of those people will follow them. That's what would happen. So congratulations, you've accomplished nothing. And all they want is more handouts. That's all they want. So this is a joke.
So we will see at the end of fiscal year, based on results and where we are financially.
So as the CEO, you do not make the decision. You have no say in whether or not bonuses are granted.
All of the management team measures and analyzes our results on an annual basis, which are published very clearly in
As
our
the CEO,
in the
you
quarterly
have no
reports.
say in whether or not bonuses are given.
All of the management team presents to the board of directors the results of our year against KPIs, key performance indicators that have been tracked throughout the year, and based on the analysis and the results, the board of directors makes its decision. I should just point out, perhaps of interest, for example, last year, we did not meet 2 of our KPIs,
Ms. Tate,
and our
thank
bonus
you.
level
I'll go to my
was
next
reduced.
question now. I realize that you'll do your best to talk out the clock, so I'll just kind of keep us going along here. My next question is this. Those KPIs, would you table those with this committee?
They're public in our annual report.
Perfect. Thank you. Based on the metrics that are used then, last year, you gave out $16 million in taxpayer-funded bonuses to the staff. That was an average of $14,000 to staff members at the CBC. Most Canadians don't even see half of that in a bonus, not even a quarter of that in a yearly bonus. $14,000 was the average amount that was given to CBC staff. What were the metrics that were used in order to determine that bonus amount?
So again, the KPIs are published, and they're very clearly have to do with performance of the service. For example, digital reach. For example, engagement with news in the regions. For example, performance on engagement with kids and children. All of those are published very clearly in our annual report. And I actually want to, if I may I ask? I think your number is wrong. If I want to correct the record.
I would just highlight for you that it's interesting to me because you're saying that these are the metrics, but actually the viewership of the CBC is cut in half since you took leadership in 2018. It's come down by half.
Oops.
I guess we were right. It is her fault.
Oops. When your viewership goes down by half and you're still giving out bonuses, something's wrong with your KPIs, folks. For those that don't know, a KPI, she did mention it, it stands for Key Performance Indicator. So a KPI is a metric that goes on a company scorecard or balanced scorecard or, company objectives. There's 1,000 different names for it. And what it is each company, depending on what it does and what it produces, they will have, different types of key performance indicators. And that is to ensure that each department is striving for the overall success of the company. And those KPIs would be made up of other KPIs. And it, filters down to the director level, to the manager level, to the supervisor level, to the employee level. So it's designed so that all of the employees are all rowing the boat in the same direction, and it all filters up to the overall success of the organization. So if the bottom level employees are doing well, that means the top level employees are doing well, and vice versa. So that's what they're talking about when it comes to this stuff. So what are you measuring? Like, Did you show up to work? Yes. Congratulations, you get a bonus, even though half of our viewerships have disappeared over the last 5 years.
So it's interesting to me that you're giving bonuses or performance awards when in fact the CBC is performing the poorest it's ever performed. So bonuses keep going up, they keep skyrocketing, but performance, as you say, the bonuses are granted based on.
I really, if I may, Madam Chair, I'd like to correct the record. If I may correct the record.
Ms. Tate, my question for you, for 2023, will you be given a bonus?
I would like to correct the record, if I may, Madam Chair. First of all, I don't believe the number was 16 million in last year. I'm going to ask Marco Dubé, who manages the people and culture at our company, to correct the error that the member has stated.
Sorry, Madam Chair, through you, I do have a question on the table, and that is, Ms. Tate, for 2023, will you be given a bonus?
I'm going to come back to your question after he corrects the record.
Madam Chair, I would ask you, through you, Madam Chair, the witness knows that her instructions here are to answer the questions that have been given.
Have 27
She can correct the
seconds.
record by sending in a written notice if she wishes.
You can do that, Ms. Tate. You've gone over time.
My time has been interrupted numerous times because the witness doesn't want to answer my question. It's very simple. Will she be given a bonus in 2020?
It's not my decision whether I get a bonus or not. Let's just be clear.
Thank you. That's enough time.
Stupid chair. Doesn't even understand the time. Anyway, very fishy. Will you be given a bonus? It's not my decision.
No. Before that, it was, will you be given a bonus? Well, I want to correct the record because I think you have the number wrong, and I have to ask that guy over there, and I want to correct the record, blah, 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 blah.
So sounds like she is going to be given a bonus, by the way. Sounds like she is.
Well, yeah, because otherwise she'd just say no.
Right. Or, I don't know yet. I'm waiting to hear from the board, but I'm going to recommend myself. And you notice she said something similar to what I said before. The leadership team, the management team, presents to the board of directors. Yeah, they present the reasons why you think you should get bonuses. That's what that is. That's a recommendation for the bonuses for the leadership team.
Ms. Tate, I just looked online, and as CEO, it is your responsibility to determine who you would recommend for bonuses and how much. You recommend that to the board, and then the board can veto you, of course, if they wish to. Now, of course, if they were to do that, it would signal that they don't have confidence in your leadership. So I think, given the fact that they've extended your contract by 18 months, they probably would take your recommendation. So I'm just curious, it's coming up in 2 months. Will you be recommending that executive bonuses are given?
Boom.
Good. Don't let her off the hook.
Boom. Absolutely. Exactly as I said. And again, we haven't seen this before, but this is very common when it comes to organizations, whether they're public or private or whatever. So this is what happens. The president and CEO recommends. So this is the perfect question to be asking, because before she has said, well, it's not my decision. Well, it's your decision whether you recommend it or not. And my guess is she's going to say, well, we haven't decided that yet, and we're going to see, she's going to
dodge it again.
Yeah.
I will respond to that question as I have earlier, which is to say, if we achieve the results of the current fiscal year, I will recommend that the 1,140 unaffiliated, non-unionized employees receive their fair pay, their performance pay.
Their fair pay, their bonus pay. So you will be recommending then in 2 months' time that the executives receive a bonus?
If they achieve their targets.
Okay. So you already said earlier that targets were not met in previous years, and I also looked that up online, and that is in fact true. In fact, not only there were a number of targets that weren't met, and then the vast majority of targets were only partially met, and yet still bonuses were given. So how many targets have to be met in order for bonuses to be given this year? Fully met.
So we have a system where targets can be partially met, not met, or overachieved.
Yeah.
And we go through that system. We present this to the board. The board approves at the end of the year the performance of the organization. And
how many have to be completely met in order for the bonus to be given?
Well, I would suspect that Some of it have to be completely met to have.
Some of it have to be completely met. So, Ms. Tate, you're the one that gives the recommendation. So, I'd like you to answer: will your recommendation be met on Will your recommendation be given based on some being met, 4 being met, 6 being met, 8 being met, all being met?
You understand the way it works. Let's say there are 7 performance indicators. Each one is awarded a percentage of the performance pay. So revenue, for example, is 20%. Revenue is a huge driver for the company. And so if we don't achieve revenue, we will not achieve the 20%. But that's not to say it goes to 0.
Okay.
That's what Marco is saying,
So
that there will be a lesser amount awarded. And to your question, I very much suspect that this year we will not meet our revenue target entirely, given my comments about the Quebec market.
So, Ms. Tate, what you're telling the committee then is that the decision has been made to cut 800 jobs. That announcement came out on December 4th, right before Christmas, which is a pretty harsh time of year to make that announcement. And what you have just told this committee is that there is still an intent to give bonus pay, whether all KPIs have been met or not.
First of all, the announcement in December was an estimate forecast should our financial situation not improve, and the majority of the cuts, and it's very clearly stated in the release, if the majority of the cuts will occur in the next fiscal year. We were giving a long runway in order to be able to improve. In fact, we are very focused as a management team on improving the results and reducing the cuts to the extent we can.
You're a cold-hearted bitch. I'm sorry, but you are.
My guess is that they made the announcement when they made the announcement to try to coerce the government into giving them more money.
Well, probably because if memory serves, government budgets and crown organization budgets have to be submitted in December. So, but it doesn't excuse the fact that you're telling people, and you're not even telling which people, you're giving the entire organization a heart attack by saying, well, and it was actually 600, by the way, 600 employees. So they've actually upped it to 800. So you're now saying, before you were saying 600, you're now saying 800. Yeah, Merry Christmas, 800 of you are probably going to have to walk the line. And I think it's a little bit more sinister than this. I think it's, we're trying to get some sympathy from the government, but I think that's also kind of slave driving the people that are working under them of pick up your socks, you're going to lose your job. That's a terrible way to run an organization. That's not leadership. That's Justin Trudeau. That's the way he runs things. So maybe it's no surprise this is how this lady's running things. Like, this is just absolutely deplorable. And they're also saying, well, sometime next fiscal. Okay, you're not even telling them when. Like, come on, lady. But your job is safe, isn't it? You've been extended. Despite the fact that you've lost half of your viewership. Great job, board of directors.
The longer we have to work on a problem, the greater chance we have of achieving the result.
Ms. Tate, here's a few facts. Under your leadership, trust in the media, and especially in the CBC, has declined. Fewer Canadians are watching the CBC, and in fact, viewership has been cut in half since you took over in 2018. Ad revenue has plummeted. It's decreased by 31% from 2022 to 23. And the number of CBC staff earning a 6-digit salary has doubled. And then to add to that, in the last 2 years, just the last 2 years under your leadership, more than 100 correction notices have had to be issued with regards to stories put out by the CBC. In your estimation, have you met the KPIs and therefore deserve a bonus this year?
Wow. Can't argue with those facts.
I love it. I frickin' love it. This is probably the first time in this lady's life that she's being asked hard questions and held to account. I looked up her bio. Somehow, this lady has been an executive for 30 years.
What? That's almost as long as I've been alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she doesn't seem like a very good executive either.
No, she seems like an absolutely terrible executive. Like, absolutely terrible. So, Catherine Tate, going back to 1990, was an executive director. Then she was president and chief operating officer 7 years after that. And then she was president and co-founder of a company after that, and then executive chair and founder, previously CEO of another company. And then she was hired to be president and CEO of CBC and Radio Canada. So, like, have you ever actually had a real job? Have you had a worker bee job? Because it doesn't seem like it. No wonder she doesn't know what she's doing. She doesn't even know how to do it. Because she never has.
I think I said earlier, I actually am not subject to the short-term incentive plan of the rest of the corporation because
There's no performance bonus available to you?
I have a performance pay based on my objectives, which correspond obviously to the company's, but also to additional objectives
and
that
in
are.
your estimation, have you met those metrics that are set out for you?
Absolutely, yes. What you have described are the industry trends.
Wow.
So what she just admitted there, folks, and she did it quickly, so in case you missed it, she just admitted that she's going to be receiving a bonus.
Yep. I've met my targets. Therefore, I get a bonus. But what you're talking about, those are trends. The terrible performance of the CBC.
That's just a trend.
And, like, you can hear Trudeau in this lady's voice because Trudeau has taken the exact same approach when it's come to Canada. Oh, we're doing a great job in Canada, but it's the world. The world is the problem. It's not us. The world.
Yeah, it's not CBC that's the problem. It's the advertisers. We're not getting as much advertising revenue. Well, yeah, if you don't have as many eyeballs on the screen, advertisers are not going to pay you as much as they were before.
Well, and I will agree with you. There is a trend that Canadians don't trust CBC at all.
Yeah, that's true.
So what happens when you lose the trust of your viewership, lady? They're not going to watch you. Surprise! And here's the problem. Once you've lost your customer, you're never getting them back. That isn't a trend, that's a fact.
I do not control the number of Canadians that have left television to go online. And by the way, equal to the number declining on CBC television that you continue to report is an increase in millions that are watching GEM. So if you're measuring viewership, I think you need to look at the totality of the experience. And that is why, by the way, Madam Chair, we submitted some documents to help the committee understand the reality of the numbers. Today, only 11% of English Canadians watch television only.
Yeah.
No kidding. Who wants to sit around and wait for a TV show to come on when you can just hop on your computer or your tablet or whatever and watch it when you want to watch it?
And ladies and gentlemen, as we've said before when we've talked about C11 and C18, this isn't news. This isn't news in 2023. Organizations in television knew this back in 2010, even earlier. They knew this. So for her to say, well, only 11% of people are watching TV only, you knew this before. And if you didn't, then your organization is terrible at understanding what's going on. And you're just as bad as all the newspapers out there that put their fingers in their ears and their hands over their eyes and didn't want to see where the internet was taking things. And you're just like, no, people will never go. We're a trusted institution. They'll always stay. This is what happens.
This is the problem with dinosaur media not adapting to modern technology.
And when she said it, Fox called it out. She's like, well, they're going online. Yeah, right there. That's what motivated C11 and C18, right there.
Yeah, because they lobbied for it.
Yep.
They lobbied to shut down channels like Northern Perspective.
And this is the result. These morons like this, she's the custodian of $1.3 billion of our tax dollars.